It has been an absolute privilege to watch my big brother Ben build his investment property portfolio over the last 10 years. There's absolutely no doubt that it didn't come without its sacrifices, without its trials, without its tribulations. So today I'm going to grill Ben, ask him a few questions that he doesn't even know about, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what Ben has learned from buying 10 properties over the last 10 years. To kick things off, Ben, where did it all begin for you?
I think for those of you that have been following our videos for the last 8 years, you might have heard me talk about this before, but it was in my second last year of uni. I still had 1.5 years to go, and I was at a secondhand bookstore. Like so many other people, I sound like a broken record, but it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki's book. And I remember picking it up, and then the next day literally just met my wife. Like, we'd been together for under a year at the time, and we were going to her best mate, who was like her maid of honor at her wedding's party down in Redcliffe on the water at her parents' home, and they had like a DJ and like a full day party vibe going on. But I was so hooked on this book that I was 22 at the time and just spent the entire day on the Sun Lounger reading this book. People were coming up to me going, "Dude, what are you doing?" And like, don't get me wrong, as much as the next person, I love a day party and hitting some beers, but I was just so hooked on this book. I finished it that day, and then I went around the party and just talked to everyone about how I was going to take over the world.
I love that so much. And it's so funny that you say that, because I've recommended that book to so many people that I've talked with over the years. And it's pretty common. Like, anytime anyone picks it up, they just don't want to put it down. Luckily, it only takes like 4 or 5 hours to read as well.
Yeah, it's an easy read.
So obviously reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad sparked some ideas in your mind. What did you decide to do after reading that book and learning more about investing?
Yeah, so the challenging part for me was I was 2.5 years into a 4-year double degree, and the problem was, like, I couldn't immediately leave uni and go out and start earning money to invest. And from that time forward, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it was to invest in property and longer term, maybe start a business. And so what I did is I said, well, if I want to get myself in the best position when I finish my uni degree and get straight into earning some decent money, then I need to load my resume up now. And so in that last year and a half of uni, I ended up going and working for the Queensland government, the Sunny Coast Council, Oxfam, Parsons Brickenhoff, and the Queensland government or Queensland Health, and spent like 6 months each in internships just for free with all of those different companies for a period of time. And so by the time I finished uni and got into IBM's grad program, my resume was like stacked, and I was able to go from like graduate wages to within a couple of years earning good money.
I know anybody out there that's finished a uni degree knows how good that feels when you go from, working in retail, working at Boost Juice, working in a bar, to then actually having a full-time job and earning some real money for the first time. So then how long did it take you to build that first deposit? Because everyone says the first one's the hardest one, right?
Yeah, so don't get me wrong, man. Like, at the time I was working at Fridays picking up glasses. I was working at this restaurant as well. I was working at Noodle Box, like cleaning dishes, and like Guzman and Gomez type vibe. Like, I was doing whatever I could just to survive. And like during that whole uni experience, I was on less than $400 a week with Centrelink in my wage. So I also like learned that like life was already amazing without cash. Like, the reason I invested wasn't to become wealthy. I know that's a lot of people's end goal. The reason I wanted to invest was because there's 3 options. Like, I can stay on Centrelink forever and train and surf, but that's hard in its own way, like constantly being worried about the future. You can sort of go out there and just do what most people do, which is sort of work till they're 70 and hope you've got enough stacked in the bank to get you through to the pension. Or you can invest your way out of the system, as Kiyosaki said, and, create choices in your life in your late 30s, 40s, early 50s, and do what you really want to do while you're young enough to enjoy it. So I sort of took that third pill, and that was the way I went out. Saving for that first deposit though was so brutal, because I'm still not a saver. Like, I fucking hate saving. I hate doing the videos that we do on budgeting. Like, I hate it.
It's not ideal, is it?
It's not fun. But what I became very, very, very good at was going, well, here's my fixed expenses in my life and driving them down. So an example would be, I used to have 3 phones, one for work, one for like family, friends, and one for my wife, and then an internet account at work and at home. And I was paying $100 a month for those 5 things.
Wow.
Now I've gone to like an internet plan with a different provider that's $50 a month at work and $50 at home. and got from 100 on those 3 phones to 25 a month with Audi. So all of those sorts of things, like I've been very good at identifying my fixed costs and then reducing them. But more importantly, something that you and I do religiously, and that's paying ourselves first. Now, some weeks it's $50 for us. Like last month, I didn't save anything at all. But this month, if I make some surplus, then I'm going to like put some of that money away, whether it's 500 a week or 1,000 a week or $50 a week. That habit has changed my life. And so in my first year out of uni, I'd got into the global program with IBM. But Lisa, my wife, was finishing off her interior design course on the coast, and she's like, we're delaying the grad program by a year. And so I came up to the coast and I was working, and I saved my deposit in that time. And then, as you know, like I sort of blew that deposit on a trip overseas with a mate, came back, got a good slap in the face from my father-in-law, and then got my shit together in the year after that to save my next deposit.
I guess it's a good lesson to learn, spending the money and then having to rebuild it again. But at the same time, like as you said, like you're not the best saver, and like you've still been able to enjoy a lifestyle over the years, traveling to multiple different countries, raising 3 kids, at an early stage of life, going from earning big money to then trying to start your own business and really try and figure out that whole sphere of things. So it's like, even whilst, you don't love it, you've still been able to live this amazing life whilst being able to invest at the same time.
Yeah, so for me, man, like I'm so lifestyle focused. And in a previous vid, you were talking about values and being like values instead of fear being the way that you drive yourself forward. So you've got a vision of your future and what you value now, and you make decisions towards that. And I've always been exactly the same. Like I choose to move forward in the direction of my dreams. I love traveling. Like I love caravanning. I love spending time with my kids. Like I want to be a really, really active dad. Like this morning, surf was pumping. We got some sick waves. But before that, I was already up with the kids. Like we went down to the horses, our neighbours' horses, not mine. Thankfully, they seemed like a liability. But we were feeding them carrots and apples, and the kids were having a ball and like mucking around on the skater. And it's like, I choose that. And so my journey is not this, like, how people just look like everything they touch just turned out perfectly? Like mine's the opposite. I feel like everything that's ever happened, I've had to like properly work for, or just being gifted by like God or by luck. Like, and so with me, I did go straight out of uni into like a great job. And then I went to IBM's program, and like my salary dropped by like 30, 40 a year. And then I went out of IBM into like a 200 grand job, earning way more than my skills like allowed me to, because of like a niche in the solar market. And then found out that I was having my first bub sort of unexpectedly when I was 26, and I was 27 when we had her. My wife was like 23. And I went from 200K a year to like 45 grand a year and completely changing careers. And then I did that again. Like I heard this thing from a guy called Brian Tracy, who was a real estate developer and motivational guy in America that I used to listen to constantly. And he said, if you want to build a residential block of a life, which is a normal life where you get to retirement and end up on the pension, then build a 6-inch foundation, because that's all you need for a single story home. And that's in terms of your values, your character, your knowledge, your skills, like your habits. But he's like, if you want to build a skyscraper, then you need sometimes up to like a 20-story foundation just to hold the bloody thing up. And so I got that advice off him and another mentor I used to have, Colin, and they were both like, go deep in your 20s, build skills in your 20s, don't worry about money at all. So I went out and I learned project management, I went and learned leadership, I went and learned sales, I went and learned marketing, I went so deep into property that by the time I was like 30, I'd spent 10,000 hours in 3 things that the market massively, massively values. And that's why it looks easy now, but it was a fucking shit fight. Like it was so hard. Like when we had our first kid, we like literally had like $30 left over at the end of the week, because I was earning 45 grand a year with 3 properties and a kid. And like we shared one Toyota Echo that was 2 grand.
Yeah.
But it's like people see this phase and it's like, it looks so good. And it's like, I fucking love that phase just as much.
Yeah.
Like, it was so sick.
Even though it was challenging and there was mistakes that you made and lessons to be learned, it's like, if you're ever going to do it, that's a stage of your life that you want to do it in your 20s, where you've got time to fail, but as long as you learn from those lessons and learn from those mistakes. So, to segue into the properties, like obviously there was some bad investment decisions in those 20s, right? So like, what was your worst investment decision?
What was my good one? It's probably better.
That's coming. It's coming.
No, I mean in my 20s, did I make it?
Did I make a good one?
No, like out of all of the properties I've ever bought, every single one of them has kicked ass now. But the problem wasn't so much with my investment strategy. My problem was trying to get rich quick in my 20s.
Hey, that's every 20-year-old out there.
I was like, I'm going to be fucking financially free by 30.
Lucky Bitcoin wasn't there when you were 20.
I would have been speculating the shit out of that probably. Probably would be an investor in property. I'd probably be a Bitcoin millionaire and then broke.
Yeah, exactly.
In my 20s. But, the decisions that I was making weren't the best house in the best street and buying the best market close to the city or the beach I could afford with a big piece of land in, the flat block in like the nice part of the suburb. It was more like, hey, this report hotspotting said that this market could double in value in the next 5 years and that's cheap. And, if I can buy this shitbox house in the worst street, in the worst pocket of the suburb, in the worst suburb, then I'm going to kill it because I got in 20 grand cheaper than realestate.com said it was worth. And so where I thought there was value, it's like cigarette bud trading versus long-term value investing in stocks. It's like Buffett goes, invest for something that you'll hold for life and pass on to your kids. But there's another strategy that he and other investors employ, which is get that last little drag out of the cigarette you find on the ground, write it up and get out before it busts.
Yeah.
It's I was doing that in property. I was trying to get that little bit of upside cream because I felt good to be I just made 50K, man, when I was making 50 grand at work. But, I created a lot of mistakes from doing that stuff.
And in your 20s, you got to do what you got to do to try and figure it out. But knowing what you know now, it's when you read those reports and you read those hot spotting things, it's if you're reading it, you're almost too late. You sort of want to be like the insider trading where you're figuring this out before it's becoming an article on realestate.com or hotspotting.com or whatever.
Look, unless you download our 20th hottest suburbs guide from our website, they are legit suburbs that are going to do fucking amazing in the next 15 years. We're trying to do the opposite of let's talk about it 3 years after it pumps. But I fully agree, man. And I was I would probably put the guy from Residex's kids through university with the number of reports that I speculated on.
Love it.
And I'm not going to lie, everything that I ever bought using that publication doubled in value in the time that I owned it.
So good.
I wish he was still producing them because they were gold. I figured out how he was doing it. And so now we help clients do the same thing. But it's it took 7 years for us to figure out the method to that madness.
Yeah. So you spend your 20s, a little bit of a dodgem car, just banging into the barricades, banging into other people, just trying to figure it out. But the proof is in the pudding and you did figure it out. So, what would you say was your best investment decision?
I suppose before I talk about that, because there have been some good ones now, is the turning point for me was at one point I'd bought 9 properties, I think. I didn't own all of them at that time, but I'd bought 9 and I was I don't know, I can't remember now, 32, let's just say is a number, something like that. And I was I'm now at a point where I can see that I'm going to be very, very wealthy longer term if I hold all of these properties because they weren't bad properties. The block size were a bit small, but every single one of them from that point till now has doubled in value if I kept them all. They were the right things in the right markets at the right time. They're not as good as what we would buy now.
You just didn't have the right time horizon.
But it was cool. I've now got 3 kids and I want to hang out with them. And I don't want to work 100 hours per week anymore. And I'm burnt all of my cortisol out. And I'm just running on fumes and I'm not showing up as my best self. I'm not training as much as I want to train. I'm not surfing as much as I want to surf. And I'm there's something wrong with my portfolio, but I don't know what it is. And by this point, like we were already in the business, right? Like we were doing this stuff day in, day out.
Yeah.
And
Instead of it being a side hustle, it became a full-time gig for you.
yeah, and I'm talking to these people that are 50 with 150 grand a year of passive income that never earned more than 100 grand in their life. And I'm like,
That
I'm not like talking to them. Like, I'm helping them buy in Brisbane, but I'm also like, dude, how did you do it?
Yeah.
Taking them all out for lunch and learning.
not letting that ego come up.
Oh man, like ego is like the harder you've been hit, the less like it can attach to anything. It's just like, fuck, no matter what I do,
Love that.
it's got to go.
Yeah.
And so like that died. And so what happened at that point is it all came to a head. And one night when my wife was away, it was about 2 a.m. in the morning. I was like reading all of these articles and all of these things. I'm like, I'm not stopping. I just had this like intuition of like, I'm going to find it tonight. And then I stumbled on Phil Anderson.
Oh,
And it was like, holy shit, the method to this madness is there's only madness. And then it's how you understand how to work in with that.
yeah.
People will only speculate and boom, or they'll run the fuck away from markets and freak. And as soon as I understood the cycle of how they do that based on how governments and banks lend money during different stages based on economic conditions, I went, boom. I remember coming into you and going, this is like insane.
We went for a massive walk that next morning actually, and just like, bro, I have literally found the gospel of investing.
Yeah, and I sold 7 properties immediately, and that was an ego death at that time. And I was like, I've gone from being an investor to like I've got my own home and 1 property, and then from that point I started again, and that was my second cycle. But that wasn't based on like gut intuition. That was based on like hundreds of years of data, and us homely came into our life at that point with the data, and we understand what works better and what doesn't from looking at hundreds of properties we bought.
Yeah.
And it was like, it all just went, doot, 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 doot. And like we've got a 1-pager, which is like the perfect investment property if you want above average gains longer term.
Yeah. And then also on top of that, like the power in the land kind of came in at the same time. And then with the power in the land, we also started to see the articles coming out from CoreLogic about the houses versus units. And it's just like, honestly, like the stars align to point to guide us to our true north and start focusing on what it is that we love and that we're passionate about.
Yeah. I got big time into Ray Dalio at that point and started with Principles, that then read Big Debt Crises, which is the book where he looks at 100 years worth of the 11 or 12 biggest busts in history. And I just went, this is actually so simple. It's just like the media doesn't, like selling simple is impossible to do, which is why so much of our content is layered. It's like, it fucking sucks because I've done one video 5 years ago, which was like, this is it. Like, this is all you need to do. If my kids only ever watched one video, it would have been that one. It's less than 20 minutes and it's got like 400 views on it. It's just, it is simple. So it's like, there's intricacies, but yeah, once it all formed a line and we could see our North Star, then it was like, cool, let's go.
Love that, man. And, you know, as you mentioned before, it definitely hasn't come without its sacrifices. And I think that's just a natural part of the journey of being a human being, but certainly of being an investor and a business owner. What are some of the biggest sacrifices that you've had to make over the last sort of 10 years to get to where you are today?
I think like financially, like constantly living in that delayed gratification. Like my wife and I only bought our second car in 2015. Like we had one car for so long and we never upgraded our houses above what we could afford. Like we lived in places that were just so, and we loved every one of them. Like this is the thing, like some people think and need that something external is going to make you happy. I was happy on $400 a week.
Yeah.
Happy on 1,000. I was happy on $4,000. I was happy on 800 after that. Like I don't need the cash to like for purpose. I care about freedom. Like my value system really revolves around that. So sacrificing, that was delaying the gratification, but that's just built in my nature. I would eat my veggies, then my potato, then the meat.
Yeah.
As a kid, like where like, you know, a few of the others like in our family would just go straight for their favorite thing. And it's like, you and I both have that same habit. It's just in our nature to like not trade what we want most for what we want in this moment.
Yeah.
But obviously there was a massive trade in my headspace for a while. Like you sort of had to go through that deep and pretty dark period of like me just massively struggling with my own brain and thoughts. And I look back now and it's just, it actually wasn't who I am. I call it like a dark night of the soul. And I look back now and I'm like, it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Right.
It's just like, I've heard this thing, it's like the wound is where the light enters, or the darkness is where the light comes in. And once the light comes in, it's all you see.
Yeah.
And so it took a long time to recover from that and get everything back to normal. But what I learned from like that period of my life is like, I've got like an anxious personality type just because I'm like a head thinker versus like a heart intuitive person. But that I just had too much shit on. Like I was doing like building every year, subdivisions, Airbnbs. I had a second business it grew from like nothing to like millions of dollars in turnover in like 6 months. And I was working with my mum in that business, property management. Then I had Pumped at the same time. I had like 3 kids really quickly. And my wife and I moved houses like 17 times in 15 years. So it was just like too much.
Yeah.
And now that I touch too much, I know what that feels like. And that's why we meditate. And it's why we like plan our weeks out. And it's why we only take on a handful of clients a month instead of like everybody that wants to work with us, which every month is way more people than we take on. So it's like all of those little things now are just like, that you got to go through too much. I had to go through too much, to get to this point.
It reminds me of the book from Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way, where, you know, you can find like opportunity in hardship, and like the opposite doesn't even really exist, in the sense that like you seek a comfortable life, or you seek to just like have an easy life, and it doesn't work out like that. I remember when you said like you're in Bali and you're like, I thought that like it was in relation to the business or investing and things like that. But it's like, no, these things just grab on at any time. So it's like, you know, finding that comfort and that like contentness in the hardship, in the challenging times when you're sacrificing so much. And I find it really challenging as well when you are like making decisions today for a future that doesn't exist yet. Especially with like what we have learned over the years as well. And that's like nowadays we do operate the business in a very strategic and specific way to enable us to live in alignment with our values and our ideal lifestyle, which has been a beautiful thing. And it's like, you answered this question quite well there, but I want you to delve a little bit deeper into it. And it's like, you know, you've obviously sacrificed a lot, but it's like, in hindsight, in retrospect, like what have those sacrifices done for you today? And like, what have those challenging experiences enabled you to realize as a father, as a business owner, as a property investor, as a brother, as a son, as a husband today?
Yeah, man, that's a really good question. Like, I think I believe there's 4 stages that we all go through as people, especially as like young men and women with some ambition, which is every single person watching this. You're choosing to listen to us talk about this stuff instead of hitting the beers or avoiding and doing other things. Like, that's a conscious choice that you guys are making, we've made as well. I think the first phase is getting health together. Like, if you've come from a stable or unstable background, like getting your health, mental, physical health together, I think is a really good foundation. And that's where you and I both started, like going from like party boys to like,
let's not beat around the bush.
Should have said some words, but I won't.
Yeah, that'll work.
But yeah, like to like, you know, going, hey, like I'm 20 and I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm going to move to Queensland and surf every day, skate every day, train every day, and just like find people that are that vibe and just change my lifestyle around. And, you know, then once the health thing's sorted, I believe that creating a base level of financial stability. And I believe there's 2 ways to do this: through choosing a career versus a job, because a career is something that semi-interests you, like property did for you when you started. And then over time, helping people, creating a better world, and actually like property became like the fun. Like, and it turned from like a job into a career. And I've seen that for many people. And it's like, you'll go further in a career than you will in a job, and then investing some of that money. And I think you don't have to be financially free to feel it. You just have to have the assets behind you, 2 houses or 3 houses that in 15, 20 years you'll own outright that'll give you 100 grand a year of passive income for life that are owned debt free and are worth $2 million plus. And it's like everything will be cool after that. And so it's like that's step 2. Step 3 for me, this isn't necessary for everyone, but it was for me. You have to like completely lose yourself and your identity and go through your challenges and your black night of the soul to like almost, like, I don't mean to sound this in a bad way, but like reborn, like just so rattled by whatever happens. And it could be injuries, it could be addictions, it could be mental health, it could be family stuff, it could be like any way it shows up, losing jobs. But that stuff has to happen to like crack you open to a bigger version of yourself.
Wow.
And surrendering comes off the back of that. And that's what happened for me. Like it was like, I just was the dude that pushed every rock up every hill. It's fucking exhausting to do that, but it works. And if that's your only way now, keep hustling. That's why 99% of this shit online is like hustle, grind, like all the big videos of that, because that's where most people get stuck.
Yeah.
And then it turns from pushing to letting go. And sometimes you get rolled over by the rock and sometimes it starts getting momentum down the hill. And then I believe that the 4th stage that we should all be aspiring to is just, you don't even care about yourself anymore. It's all about helping other people. Obviously, we're selfish, we're tortured individuals, we're like humans, we're broken. But it's like giving a fuck about other people and serving the world. And that's where I think both of us are now. It's like we've got enough. It's nowhere near as much as most people go for, but it's like perfect for us. And it's like, well, like, let's just help as many people as we possibly can. And how many people can we pull back up and help? And it's like, that's the journey. And I think we're all on it in varying degrees. And it's like, that's the big thing that I've learned through all this.
One of the things that I recognize in that journey for you as well is this, like, in that surrendering, it also coincided at a time when you found a little bit more faith and a little bit more trust in whatever you want to call it, right?
100%.
Like God, you know, whoever it might be, but having faith in, like, you know, I don't have that much control of like what happens to me. It just sort of happens. And you got to kind of go through those bad times to have that. But like, did you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like I've found an incredible amount of faith. Like I don't go to church or anything like that, but I have a deep, like, personal relationship with God now that I've never really talked about on camera because I don't want it to be anyone else's thing.
Hard to explain sometimes, right?
Yeah, it's just for me, it's just I completely trust that I'm going to be looked after and that everything's okay. And I've like asked for the forgiveness for all of the mistakes I've made. And I feel like I was living for so much of my life in a fear place, in a like thinking backwards space. But like as I've let go and then as I've moved to service, it's like it is really good to have something positive to focus on moving forward, whether it's a holiday, whether it's just conviction in your faith, whether it's like our family is doing this, whether it's like our business is going to do that. And I've changed my orientation like a lot of people get towards just being 100% present now and then focused on my values in the future, but then having non-attachment to them. I don't expect anything to work out because I've got zero control over the things I can't. All I can control is my internal state. And that's given me ridiculous amounts of peace, like things that I used to care about, I just don't care about. All I want to do is help other people become financially free. Not so that they can be financially free and living a life of choices. Like it's so sick to travel. It's so good to take 20 weeks off a year. It's so good to not work Fridays. It's so good to buy a new caravan and a new car to take off around Oz. It's great to buy surfboards and skateboards and look after my kids.
These are the byproducts.
Eat organic food. Like these are real things in our lives right now that we can make choices on that I couldn't have even dreamed of in the past. But that's only level 2.
Yeah.
Like I want people to like get there quickly so they can let go and then they can actually just serve the world. Like imagine you're an engineer listening to this or a builder or a nurse and you're like, one choice is to work till you're 70 and make money every week. The other choice is to get financially free in your 40s or 50s and use those skills to make the world a better joint.
I love that.
Everyone can be a good parent and use their skills at some point in their life earlier to just help other people. Like imagine these, dudes earning 200 or 300 grand that we work with all the time didn't have to, and they put that mindset towards like, I'm just going to run a non-for-profit for free 4 days a week.
Yeah.
It's like that excites me. Like how much positive change can we create in one generation by being better people and being kinder? And like
So true, man.
the money thing doesn't change you. It allows you to become who you're supposed to be. That's all it is. It is just energy and a vehicle to get to where you want to be. And it's all on loan. Like I just wrote my will. It's all going back to my kids or it's all going back to charity. And
Yeah.
like all of this stuff's on loan. So if it's on loan, like let's enjoy it.
Make the most of it.
And let's just help other people as well.
Yeah, I love it so much, man. Yeah, seriously. Like, thank you for sharing your story because, we don't always get that vulnerable on here and that open because obviously a lot of people listen, and we're very, very grateful for everybody that is a part of this journey and is sitting here listening and hopefully learning some lessons from your history, from your experiences to enable us all to become better versions of ourselves. And that's what we just want for people, is to realize that self-actualization, to realize your true potential as a human being and do what you were truly put on this planet for. And I think it's just because of the economic system that we operate within, and like we all have to make money. Money does make the world go around. It does give us more choices in life, but it isn't what we were put on this planet to do. And it's like you're working towards realizing that, and I'm working towards realizing that. And we want to help everybody out there work towards that exact same reality. So thanks heaps for sharing, man. And if you haven't already done so, guys, give this video a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Woo!
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Have a spin. Yeah. Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. Look at that. So nice, eh?